Veterinarian Dr. Mitchell's flashlight trembled in his hand as he examined Max. "This dog has been through some very strange things," he told Sarah. The marks on Max's body, the change in his behavior, and most importantly, that strange collar around his neck. Where had he been for 3 years, and who had been training him? The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window as Sarah Johnson sipped her coffee, enjoying a rare moment of peace. It had been 3 years since they lost Max, their beloved golden retriever, and while the family had slowly learned to cope with the loss, there was still an empty space in their hearts that nothing could fill. 8-year-old Emma was upstairs getting ready for school when Sarah glanced out the window and nearly dropped her mug. Standing at their garden gate, as if he had never left, was a dog that looked remarkably like Max. But something was different. This dog was leaner, more cautious, and there was a wariness in his eyes that Sarah had never seen before. "Emma!" Sarah called out, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Emma, come here quickly." The sound of little feet thundering down the stairs filled the house as Emma rushed to the kitchen. When she looked out the window, her eyes widened and she let out a scream of pure joy. "Max! Mom, it's Max! He came home." Sarah's hands shook as she unlocked the back door. The dog, if it was indeed Max, stood perfectly still, watching her approach. Where once he would have bounded toward her with tail wagging and tongue lolling, this dog remained cautious, almost defensive. "Hey there, beautiful boy," Sarah whispered, slowly extending her hand. "Is it really you?" The dog took a tentative step forward, then another. As Sarah got closer, she could see the changes more clearly. His golden coat was duller, marked with small scars she didn't remember. Around his neck was a collar she had never seen before, thick, metallic, with what appeared to be some kind of electronic component embedded in it. When their eyes met, Sarah felt a surge of recognition. Despite the changes, despite the wariness, this was definitely Max. But what had happened to him? Where had he been for 3 long years? Max approached slowly, allowing Sarah to touch his head. The moment her fingers made contact with his fur, she felt him relax slightly, as if some deep memory was stirring within him. "Oh Max," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Where have you been, boy? What happened to you?" Emma came running out, but Sarah held up a hand to stop her from rushing forward. Max was clearly skittish, and sudden movements might scare him away again. "Slow down, honey," Sarah said softly. "Let him remember us." For the next hour, they sat on the back porch, allowing Max to reacquaint himself with his old home. He moved through the yard methodically, sniffing familiar spots, but always maintaining a certain distance from Sarah and Emma. It was as if he was torn between the memory of love and some new instinct that told him to stay alert, stay ready. The next morning, Sarah made an appointment with Dr. Mitchell, the same veterinarian who had treated Max as a puppy. The drive to the clinic was tense. Max sat rigidly in the back seat, his eyes constantly scanning the road as if watching for threats. Dr. Mitchell, a gray-haired man with over 30 years of experience treating animals, took one look at Max and immediately noticed the changes. "Well, he's definitely put on some muscle," the doctor observed, running his hands along Max's flanks. "Sarah, this dog has been through intensive training. Look at these muscle groups, they're developed in ways that only come from systematic, professional conditioning." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Dr. Mitchell continued his examination, paying particular attention to small scars and marks on Max's legs and back. "These aren't random injuries, Sarah. They're training marks. Someone has been working with this dog very seriously for a long time." The veterinarian's attention turned to the strange collar around Max's neck. "Now this is interesting," he murmured, examining the device more closely. "This isn't a regular collar. See this small chip here? And these contact points? This is specialized equipment, the kind used by security companies or law enforcement agencies. Law enforcement? Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. Max has been trained as a working dog, Sarah. The question is, by whom, and for what purpose? Dr. Mitchell ran a scanner over the chip in Max's collar. The device beeped, and information appeared on a small screen. The veterinarian's expression grew more serious. Sarah, I think you need to contact the police. This chip is registered to a federal database. That evening, Max's behavior became even more concerning. As darkness fell, he positioned himself by the living room window, his body tense and alert. Every few minutes, he would emit a low, almost inaudible growl. Sarah tried to call him away from the window, but Max remained focused on something outside. Around midnight, she heard him bark, not the happy, playful bark she remembered from years ago, but a sharp, warning sound that sent chills down her spine. She crept downstairs and found Max standing at the front door, his ears erect and his muscles coiled like springs. When Sarah peered through the curtains, she saw a black sedan parked across the street, its engine running but its lights off. "Max, what is it, boy?" she whispered. Max looked up at her, and for a moment, his guard dropped. She could see confusion in his eyes, as if he was torn between his training and his love for his family. He pressed against her leg, and she could feel him trembling, not with fear, but with the effort of suppressing some deep instinct. The car remained there for 20 minutes before slowly driving away. Max watched until it disappeared, then finally relaxed enough to lie down, though he remained by the door for the rest of the night. 3 days after Max's return, there was a knock at the door. Sarah opened it to find a man in a dark suit, his expression serious and professional. "Mrs. Johnson. My name is Detective Harris, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I believe you have a dog that belongs to us." Sarah's heart raced. "Max belongs to my family. He's been ours since he was a puppy. I understand your attachment, ma'am, but Max, or as we know him, Guardian, has been part of a federal operation for the past 3 years. May I come in?" Detective Harris was a tall man with graying temples and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in every detail of his surroundings. When Max saw him, the dog's entire posture changed. He stood at attention, his body rigid, as if awaiting commands. "As you can see," Detective Harris said, "Max recognizes me. Or rather, he recognizes what I represent." Sarah sank into her chair, her mind reeling. "I don't understand. Max was just our family pet. He got lost during a storm 3 years ago. And that's when our people found him," Detective Harris explained. "Max was discovered by agents from a specialized K-9 unit. They immediately recognized his potential. His scent detection abilities are extraordinary, Mrs. Johnson. In the right hands, Max can detect explosives, drugs, and even track specific individuals across vast distances." Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, having heard voices. "Mom. Who is that man?" "It's okay, honey," Sarah called up to her, though her voice betrayed her anxiety. Detective Harris continued, "For the past 3 years, Max has been instrumental in taking down several organized crime networks. He's saved countless lives and prevented numerous terrorist attacks. The collar he's wearing contains tracking technology and communication devices that allowed him to work with federal agents in the field." "But why did he come back?" Sarah asked. "If he was so valuable to you, how did he escape?" The detective's expression darkened. 3 weeks ago, Max was involved in an operation that went wrong. His handler, Agent Rodriguez, was killed in the line of duty. Max managed to escape, but not before witnessing things that, well, let's say he's been through trauma that most dogs never experience." Sarah looked at Max, who was still standing at attention. "Is that why he's different? Why he seems so distant?" "Post-traumatic stress disorder isn't limited to humans, Mrs. Johnson. Max has seen combat, violence, and loss. Coming back to you is his way of seeking safety, returning to a place where he felt loved and protected. That evening, after Detective Harris left with promises to return the next day, Sarah tried to process everything she had learned. Max wasn't just their lost family pet, he was a federal agent, a trained operative who had been living a double life she could never have imagined. As she tucked Emma into bed, her daughter asked the question that had been weighing on Sarah's mind all day. "Mommy, are they going to take Max away again?" Sarah smoothed Emma's hair, trying to hide her own fears. "I don't know, sweetheart. But no matter what happens, Max knows we love him." Around midnight, Sarah was jolted awake by the sound of Max barking frantically. She rushed downstairs to find him at the back door, his hackles raised and his teeth bared in a snarl she had never seen before. Looking out the window, Sarah's blood ran cold. Two shadowy figures were moving through their backyard, approaching the house with deliberate stealth. One of them carried what appeared to be a tranquilizer gun. Sarah's hands shook as she reached for her phone to call 911, but Max suddenly turned to her and gently but firmly pushed her toward the stairs with his nose. His message was clear: get Emma and hide. "Max, no," she whispered, understanding that he intended to face the intruders alone. But Max was already moving, his training taking over. This wasn't the family pet she remembered, this was Guardian, the federal operative, ready to protect his pack at any cost. Sarah crept upstairs and woke Emma, putting a finger to her lips to signal for silence. "We need to hide in the bathroom," she whispered. "Max will protect us." They locked themselves in the master bathroom while downstairs, Sarah could hear the sound of the back door being forced open. Max's barking stopped abruptly, replaced by an ominous silence that was somehow worse than the noise. "Where's the dog?" a gruff voice demanded. "Boss wants him back alive," another voice replied. "Rodriguez trained him too well. Max knows too much about our operations." Sarah's blood turned to ice. These weren't federal agents, they were criminals, the very people Max had been hunting for 3 years. Footsteps echoed through the house as the intruders searched for Max. Sarah held Emma close, both of them trembling as they listened to doors being opened and furniture being moved. "He's not down here," the first voice said. "Check upstairs." The sound of boots on the staircase filled Sarah with terror. They were coming for Max, but they would find her and Emma instead. Suddenly, there was a crash from somewhere in the house, followed by a man's scream of pain. Max had made his move. What happened next was something Sarah would never forget. The sounds coming from downstairs were unlike anything she had ever heard: snarls, crashes, shouts of panic and pain. Max was fighting with a ferocity and precision that spoke to years of combat training. "Get him off me," one of the intruders screamed. "Shoot him," the other yelled back. But there was no gunshot. Instead, Sarah heard the sound of something heavy hitting the floor, followed by more struggling. The house fell silent again, but this silence felt different, not ominous, but victorious. Minutes passed before Sarah heard the familiar sound of Max's claws clicking on the hardwood floor as he climbed the stairs. When he reached the bathroom door, he let out a soft whine, his signal that it was safe. Sarah opened the door to find Max standing in the hallway, completely unharmed but alert. Downstairs, she could see 2 men on the living room floor, unconscious and zip-tied with what appeared to be professional restraints that Max must have somehow applied. "How did you?" Sarah began, but then she remembered, Max wasn't just a pet anymore. He was a trained operative who knew how to neutralize threats. When Detective Harris arrived with a full FBI team 20 minutes later, he surveyed the scene with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Mrs. Johnson, I need you to understand something," he said as agents secured the unconscious intruders. "These men are part of the crime syndicate that Max helped us infiltrate. They've been hunting him ever since Agent Rodriguez was killed." Sarah looked at Max, who was sitting calmly beside Emma as if nothing had happened. "So this will never end? They'll keep coming?" "Not necessarily," Detective Harris replied. "With these 2 in custody, we can roll up the rest of their network." "But Max..." He paused, studying the dog carefully. Max has proven something tonight. He's chosen where his loyalty lies. Emma, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. Max isn't going back with you, is he? Detective Harris knelt down to Emma's level. What do you think, Emma? Should Max go back to being guardian, or should he stay here and be Max? Emma looked at Max, who returned her gaze with those intelligent brown eyes. I think Max has already decided, she said softly. Detective Harris nodded. I think you're right. Max has served his country with honor, but every soldier deserves to come home eventually. Over the next week, Detective Harris worked with Sarah to officially retire Max from federal service. The collar was removed, the tracking devices deactivated, and Max's status was changed from active operative to retired with honors. But the transition wasn't immediate. Max still exhibited his training behaviors. He would patrol the house at night, check all the doors and windows, and position himself strategically to watch all entrances. During the day, however, glimpses of the old Max began to emerge. He started playing with Emma again, though his play was more controlled and purposeful than before. He would fetch balls with military precision, returning them to exactly the same spot each time. When Emma laughed at his seriousness, Max would tilt his head as if remembering that play was supposed to be fun, not a training exercise. Sarah noticed that Max was gradually relaxing, but he never fully let his guard down. Even when sleeping, one ear remained alert for unusual sounds. It was as if he had learned to live with one foot in each world, the civilian pet and the federal operative. Dr. Mitchell explained that this was normal for retired working dogs. Max will always carry his training with him, the veterinarian said. But over time, he'll learn to trust that his family is safe, and he can just be a dog again. 3 months after Max's return, the Johnson family had established a new routine. Max had his job, unofficial guardian of the household, and his family had learned to appreciate both sides of his nature. Emma loved showing off Max's abilities to her friends. He could open doors, turn lights on and off, and even fetch specific items by name. But she also treasured the quiet moments when Max would curl up next to her for bedtime stories, just like he used to do before he disappeared. Sarah marveled at how Max had adapted. During the day, he was a loving family pet who enjoyed walks in the park and belly rubs on the couch. But at night, he transformed into their protector, making his rounds and ensuring their safety. The strange collar had been replaced with a simple leather one bearing a single dog tag, Max Johnson, hero and family member. Detective Harris visited occasionally, not as a federal agent, but as a friend. He would update them on the cases that Max's work had helped solve, and Sarah was amazed to learn about the lives her dog had saved and the crimes he had prevented. Max was one of our best operatives, Detective Harris told Emma during one visit. But I think he's found his most important job now. What's that? Emma asked. Being your dog, Harris replied with a smile. On the 1-year anniversary of Max's return, Sarah organized a small celebration in their backyard. She invited Dr. Mitchell, Detective Harris, and a few neighbors who had grown fond of Max. As they gathered around a dog-friendly cake, made with peanut butter and bacon, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey their family had been through. Max had left as a simple family pet and returned as something extraordinary, a hero who had chosen love over duty, family over career. Emma made a speech that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Max could have stayed a police dog and been famous. But he came back to us because he loves us more than being famous. That makes him the best dog in the whole world. Max, sitting beside Emma with perfect posture but a relaxed expression, seemed to understand every word. His tail wagged steadily as Emma hugged him, and for the first time since his return, Sarah saw complete contentment in his eyes. Detective Harris approached Sarah as the celebration wound down. You know, Sarah, Max taught us something important. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can do is choose what matters most. What do you mean? Max could have continued his career with us. He was irreplaceable. But he chose family. He chose love. In a world where loyalty is rare, Max showed us what true dedication looks like. As the months passed, Max's story spread throughout their community. Local schools invited Emma to bring Max for presentations about loyalty, service, and the bond between humans and animals. Max seemed to enjoy these visits, demonstrating his abilities while allowing children to pet him and ask questions. Dr. Mitchell used Max as an example in his veterinary lectures, discussing how animals could adapt to multiple roles and the importance of understanding an animal's complete history when treating them. Detective Harris eventually retired from the FBI and wrote a book about his experiences with K-9 units. Max featured prominently in several chapters, though his identity was disguised to protect his privacy. But for Sarah and Emma, Max's greatest legacy wasn't his service record or his heroic actions. It was the daily reminder that love and loyalty could overcome any obstacle, that families could be reunited against all odds, and that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys led back to the simplest truths: home is where the heart is, and love is the strongest force in the universe. 2 years after his return, Max had fully settled into his dual nature. He was both the family pet who loved car rides and swimming in the lake, and the retired operative who kept his family safe through quiet vigilance. On quiet evenings, Sarah would sometimes catch Max staring out the window, and she wondered if he was remembering his years of service, his fallen partner Agent Rodriguez, or the dangerous missions he had completed. But then Emma would call his name, and Max would immediately turn his attention back to his family, his tail wagging with pure joy. Max had learned the most important lesson of all, that true courage isn't about facing danger, it's about choosing what you're willing to fight for. And Max had chosen to fight for love, for family, for the simple pleasure of being exactly where he belonged. In the end, Guardian had completed his most important mission, coming home. Was Max's journey back to his family worth the 3 years of separation? What do you think drove him to choose love over duty? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories about the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. Max's story proves that sometimes the greatest adventures lead us back to where we started, but with a deeper understanding of what truly matters.